My name is Henry Shalom Jr. I'm from Queens, New York. I'm 31 and currently a graduate student for Middle Eastern Studies. Father of a 7-month-old, married for 3 years. I never went atheist or agnostic. I knew always that God was one. Even in church, because the Old Testament says the sins of the Son cannot be atoned by the Father, and the sins of the Father cannot be atoned by the Son. So that Old Testament verse negates the Christian idea of Jesus alayhi salam dying for the sins of the world, you know? So, and even when you go to the Bible, Isa alayhi salam says, I have come to fulfill the law, not change. And while I'm here, not one period or tittle will be taken away. So if he says that, how is he contradicting, the law of Moses? So it just didn't make any sense, And or when he's on the cross, he's like, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So I asked my pastor, I was like, is he talking to himself? And I knew, I believed in the virgin birth of Isa alayhi salam, but I didn't, if Isa alayhi salam is the best of creation, according to a Christian, why does God have to kill him to forgive me of my sins? Why can't I just be like, yeah, Rab, I'm sorry? It didn't make any sense. And when I was like, how is Jesus God and the Son of God? It didn't make any sense. So you're telling me God was in the womb for 9 months, and then God was so helpless that he needed his mother to suckle on. And then 30 years later, he dies, goes to hell, because in Christian theology, Isa alayhi salam was on the cross, and during the 3 days he was in hell, because he's taking the punishment for all of us, and then he comes back and he's resurrected. It doesn't make. Why would God send himself to hell? So, and I'd be like, yeah, Pastor Carmen, if Jesus is God in the flesh, why? It just logic dictates. But it was making. And so God was dead for 3 days. Who's running the universe? I was like, who's running the universe? How am I breathing if God's dead? Oh, and he came to Earth to experience what it's like to be a human. But if he's God, he knows what it's like to be a human better than I do. He created me. These stories in the Old Testament, like Prophet Lut alayhi salam, he slept with his daughters, and Daud alayhi salam, he sent the general off to die so he could marry these are prophets of God. The one that really bugged me the most was Prophet Noah alayhi salam. After the flood, the ark settled, and he got drunk and passed out nude, and then his sons saw him and were making fun of him. This is a prophet. If the prophet of God is getting drunk, why ain't I the prophet? I don't drink. I don't walk around naked. Why ain't Joe Schmo the prophet? Why'd you give it to Noah alayhi salam? It didn't make any sense. I was 17 and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this. So I stopped going to church, and I didn't, I was homeless twice also in my early 20s. And there was the second and last time I was homeless, I was walking to a bakery in Ridgewood. It was 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. So, they bake the breads for the following day. I would ask for some rolls and some, loaves. And I was just walking there and I'm like, yeah, God, if you get me out of this situation, I will worship you however you want me to. However you want me to. So I did that dua. I didn't know it was a dua, but I supplicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The very next day, I walked from my old neighborhood to City Field in Elmhurst where the New York Mets play. And after that was Flushing. And there was a school that said, earn your GED and get an associate's degree at the same time. And I was a high school dropout. I dropped out in the 12th grade. And so I was like, I need a GED. Associates would be nice. So I went in, took the exam. I passed. And then the next day, I got a job at a supermarket. And then one of my friends needed a job. So their parents came to me. He's like, can you get my son a job? I was like, I need a place to live. Oh, we'll rent you a room. Just get my son a job. I got him the job and literally 72 hours. 72 hours. I had a job, I was in school, and I had a place. And I was like, okay, so how do you want me to worship you? So when I was going for my associates, some very good friends of mine from Bangladesh I met. We just started talking about Islam. And I was like, so what about Jesus? We believe in the virgin birth. Die for our sins? No, okay. And so they handed me the Quran. And for the next 3-4 months, I had the Quran and the Bible, just cross-referencing. And I was like, Islam, Tawheed, oneness of God. Jesus is a prophet, alayhi salam. He didn't die for the sins of the world. This is what I believe already. This is in my nafs. In January 2006, I went to the Jamaica Muslim Center, JMC, with Imam Shamsi Ali. I took my Shahada. I was one of like 3 other people. You know what's funny though? When I took my Shahada, I asked about the Shia. I was like, who are the Shia? Don't worry about them. Just avoid them. Da da da. And I was like, whatever, fine. So I left the Shia thing alone. Come 2.5 years ago, I was sitting in my old, I don't even want to say it's mine, but I was in Masjid Taco in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and I was waiting for the Adhan to come in, and one of the, I wouldn't even say Maulana, that's giving the man too much credit. There was somebody in there like just going off on this other brother because he had a Shia roommate. He was like, yo, they're kafirs, you can't be rooming with him, don't eat his meat, it's not halal, da da da. You know, they turn off the lights and with the women, the muta, da da da. And as he's going off, they worship Ali alayhi salam, astaghfirullah, like all these things he's rattling off. I'm like, there is no way in high heaven people actually believe that. And so what I did was, I went, not really, basically down the street, so Masjid Al Hubayt, Islamic Guidance Center, in the Atlantic Avenue by the Barclay Center. And I embedded myself at the Shia Masjid for 2 weeks. Question after question after question after question. I was there for like hours, for 2 weeks straight. Then they gave me books and I read it. And so I read Then I Was Guided. And the way Dr. Chijani went about it, how he would only take hadith that both sides agree on, and of course the Quran. So I was like, you know, that sounds pretty foolproof. So I did it. And then one day, I'm in my kitchen. My wife, she had just become Muslim. Well, she's been Muslim 2 years now, alhamdulillah. And so we're in the kitchen one day, and she was like, Henry, what happened to the Prophet's family? Because she's like, he dies and then Islamic history is over. Like, that's how she was being taught. And I was like, that's the $1 million question. Now go do your research. And she, alhamdulillah, she did her research, and now I didn't pester her, but you know, one day it was like Asr time, and she goes and grabs a turba and goes to pray after her namaz. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just praying. I was like, you just slide in the door? So alhamdulillah, you know, she accepted Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. There are Muslims in the United States that can't afford prayer mats, can't afford hijab, so they don't veil. You know, they don't have access to a turba. They don't have al-kafi. Like, just in the East Coast alone, my wife and I, we mailed like over a dozen hijabs, burqas. Because one, there's no way to buy it in Allentown, Pennsylvania. You know, it's that's what we need to do. We need to get together and just start like outreach, just care packages, like new shahada kits. If you're a female, you get the hijab, the burqa, the Quran, and like another book on imamate. Or just put these, because even Why Islam, they got these new shahada packages. You get Bukhari, you get a copy of the Quran, you get a Kufi. Well, what are we doing? What are we doing? Inshallah, I get into Hausa. I got accepted to Qom. I'm waiting on the visa. They said that could take 5 to 8 months. Inshallah, I get it sooner than that. And we'll go to Hausa, study, come back to the States, open up my center.